Welcome to HMG Live, a production of HMG Strategy, your global partner helping you reinvent the future of work. Home to the HMG Strategy Top Technology Executives to Watch Awards, and also offering the HMG Marketplace, a fast, easy, safe, and efficient way to connect with the right vendors for your technology needs.
We can't be together at these events, right? But I think the next best thing is being able to connect through the marketplace.
And now, a warm welcome to today's host, lead principal and CEO of HMG Strategy, Hunter Muller.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to those in the East, and good morning to those in the West. Welcome to the Washington, D.C. CISO Executive Leadership Summit. I'm Hunter Muller, lead principal of HMG Strategy. Wow, what unbelievable time we're in right now in terms of enterprise innovation, enterprise disruption, and securing an enterprise safe and securely. We have a world-class agenda here today with a tremendous lineup of speakers and panelists. Really excited about what we put together and collaborated with on here today. So welcome. We couldn't do what we do without our partners. A big shout out to Awake Security, Zoom, and Obsidian. Really appreciate your active support and engagement. More on Awake, Zoom, and Obsidian later in the program. And I want to welcome a good friend and a long-time strategic alliance of HMG's SIM. And Mark Taylor is the CEO of SIM International. Mark, welcome to the program.
Hunter, as always, great to be here and to be a part of the HMG team. We've got a great community that's been building there in the capital area, our capital area chapter of SIM. Michael Huthwaite, James Parks, and Farah Francis, tremendous leaders, built this great community. I certainly would recommend those that are here in the DC area would connect up with that local community of SIM chapter, SIM capital area chapter. They got some great stuff going on this fall and into next year. Looking forward to connecting with them there. And Hunter, as always, thank you for your investment in partnering with us within each of these localities. Makes a huge difference, a great investment in the community. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Mark. And you're coming from today from Austin, right? You guys
That's right. Yeah, Studio A here in the beautiful Northwest Hills of Austin, Texas.
And it's becoming a real tech hub, right?
Yeah, it is. It has been growing for quite some time, but it has really taken off in these last 5 to 10 years into a whole new stratosphere. Tremendous VC market, private equity market, as well as all the other just concentrations of all the major players have got significant footprints here in our most recent edition. High profile has been Tesla building their next gigafactory here in the Austin area.
Awesome. Great to see you. Look forward to seeing you again, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks, Hunter. Take care.
Take care. So help us refine the HMG marketplace. What are organizations specifically, a little pop-up quiz, what are your top priorities right now when you think about it, folks? A little interaction here. We'll get please enter your vote and submit, and we'll show those poll numbers a little bit later. So the Top Technology Executive Leaders Who Matter Award Recognition Program, we've been running it for 13 years. Recognized over a couple hundred folks. We're going to recognize several folks here today. And we have a little video here I think we're going to run, right? August?
Later in today's program, HMG Strategy founder and CEO Hunter Muller will proudly recognize and honor global technology executives who matter. These top-tier CIOs, CISOs, and other technology executives have genuinely distinguished themselves in business transformation, digital disruption, innovation, and talent development through even the most difficult circumstances. These awards are not given lightly. They are earned. Recipients join an elite community of forward-thinking global technology executives in the HMG Strategy community. We are delighted to celebrate these exemplary leaders and their teams who have delivered unparalleled value to their organizations, their communities, and our world. Please stay with us for the award ceremony and meet the 2020 Global Technology Executives Who Matter.
Excellent. Hopefully you can stay right to the end and see the whole recognition program. It's something I'm really excited about, and I think it makes a lot of sense. It's very timely in today's environment that we're in. So first up, we have Araujo from Awake Security. Rudy is the VP of Marketing. Hey, Rudy, welcome. Look, these are so, the times are so uncertain, right? The threat landscape dramatically increased post, a pandemic as everyone began to work from home and work remotely. Tell us a little bit about Awake and what's unique about Awake.
Sure. Yeah. So, like you put it, right? I mean, I think, digital transformation hit people really, really fast, even if it wasn't on their immediate agenda. And the network, as we know it, is changing dramatically, right? You've got cloud, you've got SaaS, you've got IoT. And I think one of the challenges that customers are having and CISOs are having is how do you secure all of that in an integrated fashion, right? Because these are not separate environments as you look at them. And so what Awake's done is we built a platform that allows you to look across all of those environments, draw security inferences from it, and then actually helps you automate the investigation and the response actions as well. So the idea is how do we optimize that security operations workflow?
So how does it go? How do you actually do it? When you think through all the layers and complexities, what is the unique USP of Awake?
Sure. So three kind of fundamental pieces of technology, right? So first thing is really understanding what you have. So these are the users, the devices, the applications that are all across your enterprise. Again, depending on where they are. Once we've done that, we build an understanding of how these are interconnected, right? A user might be, using their desktop 1 second, accessing a server in your data center the next second, and then using one of your SaaS apps, but it's the same user. And if they're compromised, they're potentially compromising all of those environments. Once we've done that, we can then tell you, hey, here's some bad stuff that's happening in the environment in a very explainable way, right? So this is not the classical AI that just says, hey, just trust the AI. It's a form of AI that's called explainable AI. So you have a clear understanding of why something is going wrong, and you have a very clear path to remediate and fix that. And then the final piece is the automation, right? Automating that investigation, automating that response and remediation, if you will.
When you think about insider as a threat, how does that stack up, and as it relates to today, the vulnerabilities or the risks profile of an enterprise?
Yeah, so it's a great point, right? I think especially as people have gone remote and have started to work from home, we like to say every threat these days is an insider threat, right? And it's not because your insiders are all malicious, right? It's because all it takes these days for an attacker to break in. In fact, I think, the stats out there that says 50-60% of the breaches these days are through compromised credentials, right? So someone steals a username and a password, and then they are that insider, which means they have all of the privileges of that insider. And they're very hard to find, right? Because they're not using kind of your classical malware anymore. They're using the credentials that they, and have legitimate privileges to do. So the insider threat, I think, has become even more pronounced and more critical because it's not just looking for the malicious insider, which was easy to dismiss, I think, in the past, saying, well, most of my employees are good.
When you think about it, a CISO's got a big role, a huge amount of responsibility. What do you think the biggest challenges for the role of the CISO in today's distributed environment?
I think a couple of things, right? So one is just understanding the attack surface. I think given how broad the attack surface is, what we find in our engagements is the average security team is aware of about 40 to 50% of what's actually on the network, right? When you throw in all of the IoT devices, the Polycoms phones in the conference rooms, the TVs, everything's connected these days, and they're all ways for the attacker to come in. And if you don't have a sense of what that attack surface is, it's really hard to protect it, right? So that's kind of challenge number one. The second thing I think is once you know that, do you have the right controls in place to protect all of that expanded attack surface, right? And then the final thing I think is from an incident response perspective and a threat hunting perspective, making sure that you then have the processes and the policies in place to make sure you can not just get a sense for what that attack surface is, but you have the ability to investigate and respond. If one of your Polycom phones is compromised, do you have the skills, do you have the know-how to investigate and respond to that kind of a threat?
When you think about CISOs and the role of a CISO right now, I mean, more than ever, the CISO is needed in the line of business to help facilitate and enable innovation, needed in the C-suite to help kind of architect the road ahead, the digital road ahead, needed in the boardroom to make sure the board knows that the enterprise is safe and secure. Any advice for CISOs right now?
Yeah, I think the CISO role is more strategic than ever right now, right? As I talk to our customers, I find that, CISOs are actually briefing the board a lot more often than they used to in the past. And so I think, our key pieces of advice is it comes down to how are you enabling the business, right? And having the metrics to kind of support that. I think in the old days, it used to be about, kind of saying no, right? You can't install this, you can't do that. Now it is about how do you enable the business? And I think the best CISOs that we see have really good metrics that can justify, okay, here's why we're doing this, and here's the positive business outcomes that are going to result. So that's, I think, my main piece of advice is, focus on that, on as Malcolm Harkins, who's a friend of our company, says, protect to enable, right? And I think if you have that as the underlying mindset, then you can build the entire program and controls around what are you doing to enable the larger business that you operate with.
So that's the technical side of the equation. We at HMG, our hallmark is leadership, innovation, disruption, reimagining the customer journey, reimagining new business models, go-to-market business models. But our hallmark over the years has been helping tech leaders, CIOs, be better business leaders. Talk to us a little bit about a CISO being a better effective communicator, storyteller, and influencer in the line of business, the C-suite, and the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I look at the CISOs that have done really well, right? Firstly, you have to have a fundamental understanding of what your business is, right? Like what is it that you're doing? What are the threats that are most consequential to you, right? Because it's one thing to look at threats at kind of the ransomware level or the malware level. It's another thing to understand how is this going to put you out of business? How is this? What's your black swan event, so to speak, right? The pandemic was a great example, I think, of something that lots of people didn't anticipate, but we very quickly saw just in our customer base there were customers that pivoted really well and were able to deal with the work from home very quickly, and then there was others that struggled with it, right? So I think for a CISO to be an effective business leader, you have to first understand what is it that keeps the business running, and then making sure that security is protecting it. While at the same time not getting in the way of that business being effective, right? And then the other part that you hit on, I think, is equally critical, which is being able to communicate that both internally to your stakeholders, but also to folks like the board and your peers. So that's why I think the type of stuff you do, Hunter, is very, very effective, right? Because it's a great way to kind of share this thought leadership, this mind share across a broader community. And I love the fact that you guys do it, across the country, right? So it brings a lot of unique thought to the table.
What do you think it is about the CISO, though, in general, when they go in their mode of they default to the technical piece, when the business leader really wants to talk about business terms, business outcomes, business measures, and it's a different kind of language, right?
It totally is, right? I think the good news is I think we're seeing a lot of security teams and CISOs kind of move into that direction of focusing on the larger business, because it is not a technology problem, right? I mean, there are technology aspects to it. Certainly, you got to patch your devices, you got to update your firewall rules, you got technology to deploy, but ultimately it is a business problem. And I think, as you look at something like ransomware, for instance, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to patch my stuff and I'm going to make sure that ransomware doesn't hit me. But when it comes, push comes to shove and you have to pay the ransom, that's not just a technology decision, right? There's a lot of legal implications, a lot of audit implications to kind of factor into that decision. And I think, again, as you're pointing out, as security teams and security practices mature, they are in fact, adopting that more business first mindset.
How can people get in touch with you? You are in a marketplace, right?
Yeah, we are on the marketplace, and we love that ability for your audience to find us. Obviously awakesecurity.com is another way you can get to us as well. But yeah, the marketplace has been a great experience for us to be part of a kind of an elite set of technology vendors that you guys have picked. So we appreciate it and thank you for that.
Yeah, and how can people get started with you, Rudy? I mean, free trial or what's a pilot look like?
Yeah, so a very easy free trial. I mean, typically you just tell us what network you want to monitor. We can drop something into your cloud. We can drop it, on premise, virtual, physical, kind of whatever form factor you choose. And we're up and running in a couple of hours, right? I mean, literally all we need is a connection to the network and connection to power, and we're up and running. And then, we're starting to show you value very, very quickly, right? Giving you an idea of that broader attack surface. helping you understand the threats that might be already prevalent in the environment, and then monitoring on an ongoing basis for stuff that might be coming in.
Okay, hey Rudy, great to have you on the program. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your thought leadership and sharing the really interesting road you're on. Folks, Awake Security, check it out. They are our HMG top pick, and they are in the HMG marketplace. So please go to the marketplace and reach out and set up a meeting.
Thanks, Hunter. But thanks for having us.
Great. Thanks for being here, Rudy. Good to see you.
You too.
Next up, we have Gary Sorrentino. Gary's the Global Deputy CIO for Zoom on the future of work, redefining work. Gary, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Great to see you too. How are you?
Excellent. So, the whole world, where are you coming in from today? New York City?
No. Today I'm in Long Island.
Okay, Long Island. Great.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're enjoying the beautiful weather in the east we have right now. So, Gary, we talked about the future of work and what the culture looks like, and what's if you had a glass ball, what do you think the future really has for us here today and into the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, great question. And I'm glad we talk about this often, because every time we talk, it changes, because we keep meeting new people. And so one of the things I'm going to say is, okay, so let's talk about the crystal ball. Along the way, we've seen people change. And I think almost like September's like the beginning of a new year for most people, it changed even a little bit more towards as we got into September. And so what I see both companies and employees worried about now is a return to work. And it's how we're going to return to work. I think everybody knows that somewhere in the future, we will get back to a format that looks like work. So if we're talking a year away, right, and safety's behind us and we can be secure, healthy at work, people will return to work. But I think we're going to see more of that hybrid environment that we've been talking about. As I work with different companies, the really forward-looking companies who are trying to set that level to go forward are trying to do two things. How do we redefine work? That's one thing. And then how do we redefine the office? And I think the ones that are working on both at the same time, while doing something that I think companies don't normally do, listen to their employees. And not through polls and not through big meetings, but having one-on-one with some of their key employees to say, how do you feel about going back to work? What do you need to get back to work? And what do we need to do with the way we work? As you read, several New York companies are starting to bring people back, senior leaders, right? And now they have to fight that, how are we going to work in the hybrid? So I think the crystal ball has a little bit of for me, a little bit of a low, because I think as we go from mostly working home and we enter this hybrid, productivity will drop a little bit, because it's another curveball, right? But then I think it'll come back up again quickly. But I think companies have to learn how to work in that hybrid. And that really is going to be our next success story on the way to a new way to work.
Well, Gary, I want to thank you and Eric and the folks at Zoom, because I think you really, perhaps out of any one technology company, one technology platform, help the world stay connected during these incredibly challenging 7 months, right? When we all race home. Really, really appreciate it, number one. But number two, we know culture matters. Culture really matters. And the famous Peter Drucker comment, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? We know that one.
Absolutely. I just got off the Drucker event this morning, to tell you the truth, and we just talked about that.
Right. And so what it comes down to, though, every great leader knows it's the team. There's no I in team, and it's about building a world-class culture. What are the world-class cultural, organizational tips that we can learn from you and Zoom as it relates to this new hybrid, new norm, as we go back to a hybrid new norm model? And it's all about people and keeping people connected. When some people are in the office, some people are home, some people are traveling. Any thoughts?
I think the first thing is, and we've talked about this before, is that myself and you, we're not millennials, okay? But I think we changed a little bit. Along the way, if you asked us this, the last time we were in Chicago together when we talked about this, it was a different story. Millennials had a certain way of working. Baby boomers had another way of working. I think that changed. I think I know I've changed. I've changed in the way that I look at the office. I changed about the way I work. And so I think that some of the tips are, they need to embrace their employee values. They need to really sit down and understand, but don't put them in buckets like before, because probably both of us would be put in a bucket that said, likes to work in a physical location, right? And that might be wrong. it might be that, yes, we like that for certain things. We to tell you the truth, I do miss the ad hoc innovation. I miss the spontaneity of running into colleagues along the way, those 3 to 5 minute conversations. I even miss some of the personalization of when you work in Manhattan, going out for a beer after work is kind of normal. And so I miss some of that about hearing about my work friends, because we do have a colleague of work friends. So I think that for best tips, I think it really is about the senior leaders that are really reevaluating what their team needs. But I think the second thing is being flexible. I was working with one leader who said, strategy means I've defined it and we're going to move forward. I don't have a strategy. I have a working model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep reassessing it. I'm going to do my best to keep making fine-grained changes as we go along, because I know that if I put a strategy in place, it's not going to satisfy everyone. And I really do need to make that a living and breathing document going home and I'm going back to work, and I need to listen to my employees.
Genius insights. Really, when you think about it now in a distributed world, right? We've been talking about the knowledge worker for maybe 30 years, but in a distributed intellectual capital, knowledge working environment, it's really about how productive the individual is at an individual level and how they relate to the team and add value to the company, right?
Yeah, but I think also one of the things is we have to bring in those middle managers, those tribal knowledge guys, the guys who manage while walking around. That's going to be something that is going to have to rise to the challenge, maybe get a little bit further away from people management and a little bit more on work management. I know we just talked about, security, and in security we have a zero trust model, right? That's the right way to go forward. I think companies are going to have to now start trusting employees. If your employee's not skilled enough to work from home, that's an issue, and you'll have to fix that through training, education. But if you don't trust your employee to work home because he's not going to be productive, like he's going to do 4 hours of work and then watch movies for the rest of the day, that's a bigger problem. And I think now companies are going to have to figure out the employees that they trust and how to move that ball forward, right? Because there's going to be a lot of changes. And I think we're seeing a lot more. We went through a period that everybody was working unbelievable hours. I call that the panic stage. I don't know how to work from home full time. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job, right? And if I can be online 24/7, right, then I won't be one of the candidates to lose my job. And I think that a lot of people had that opinion, and I think we're starting to see people now working smarter. I'm glad that, and I think we also see companies who are now taking products like Zoom and saying, how do we embrace this new technology? It's not new, but it's being used in new ways. How do we embrace this technology to move our culture forward? Because you're right, culture over a piece of glass is hard.
Well, I'd argue it's hard, but there are certain aspects that are easy, because if you're just say a lower level, middle level person, and you're not working on a national or global level, that makes sense. That might be difficult. But if you have a bigger role where you need to influence many to many across a global platform, having a platform like Zoom makes my job all of a sudden incredibly easier.
I agree with that. Like I just said, I just spoke at the Drucker Foundation in Paris. And
Nice.
Then all I had to do was leave meeting, end meeting, and I'm here talking to my buddy Hunter, right? Where before that would have been an Uber, that would have been something else. I would have had to set something else. So I do agree but people have to embrace the technology. They have to really, we talked about this a couple of times. There were companies that went home and fought it. There are companies that went home and tried to recreate the physical work at home using technologies. And then there are companies that constantly are re-embracing the changes, the improvements that we're making, the improvements to how people are working. Those are the companies we're going to see be the high performing companies, where they're going to now say everything doesn't have to be A or B, right? There is that middle ground, and let's continue to figure out how to make that middle ground better and better. The world's going to keep changing. Let's change with it.
I love it, Gary. I love it. Hey, before you go, one kind of thought from the Drucker conference in Paris. Any takeaways for you?
We talked about the same thing. We talked about the future of the office and will the office come into place. And it was great to hear people talk about being willing to change, being willing to adapt. And I think that's what I'm getting from most of the places that I meet and the CEOs that I meet around the world, CIOs, CISOs, is we have to be open to change. We have to understand that the parameters are going forward. It's no longer a 2-year projects. Now it's constant change, constant adapting, because the world is going to change. Hey, I don't know. You saw some big companies went back to work in September. That might either succeed or fail. But we have to be willing to take whether it succeeds or fails, get it back into our plan, adjust and move forward.
Hey, a little news item, Zoomtopia, is that coming up?
Zoomtopia, October 13th and 14th and 15th, I believe, the middle of October. I'm actually being honored to do a couple of panels, so I hope you and your team will join my panel.
I would love to do that. And how do people sign up for that?
You go to Zoom's website for Zoomtopia. It's a general invite. It's out right now. If anybody needs anything, I always say this at your site. You always get me to give my email address, but I'm gary.sorrentino@zoom.us, and I'm open to anybody emailing me directly.
Yeah, folks, Gary's the guy you want in your Rolodex for sure. So he's an amazing individual. Thanks, Gary, for coming on the program. Great to see you.
Thank you. See you soon.
Take
Bye.
care. Hey, next up, we have John Iannarelli. John's a former FBI agent of over 25 years and now is a Fox contributing commentary on cyber. John's going to lead a panel on digital innovation in a highly distributed environment. John, welcome to the program.
Hunter, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. And hello to everybody joining us here on the DC Summit. Today, I want to talk about digital innovation in this highly distributed environment. You know, COVID has turned the world upside down. We all know that. But we still have to work on innovation. We still have to make sure we're moving the business forward and coming up with the next best thing. But with us being spread out now, working remotely, it's complex, it's difficult. How does the C-suite, how do the executives, the CIOs, the CISOs get together for collaboration? How do we do this in a remote work setting? Well, I've got 4 great speakers that are joining me today, and I'm going to go through them one at a time, give them a little bit of time to talk about what their company is doing, and take those nuggets away that can help your company. I want to start with Scott Datesman, who is a CISO for NVR Incorporated. Scott, thanks for joining me today.
Hello, John. Happy to be here today.
So I'm going to jump right in it with you, if you don't mind. First, just give us a little bit about your company, and I want to follow up with a question directly, which would be, how are you fostering innovation? How are you getting all these different people in these important positions to work together despite the fact we're all remote?
Okay. The company that I work for is NVR. We are a national home builder and mortgage company, one of the top 5 home builders in the country. And a lot that we have to do in the manufacturing side, the financial industry. So a lot of different aspects to our business.
So go ahead now, tell us, what are you doing? How do you get these folks in all these different locations? Because it's so easy to be collaborative when you're in the same room, but when you're in the Zoom room, how do we make it happen?
Much more difficult. Definitely, like everyone else, the pandemic hit and we found ourselves with a lot of people working in ways they certainly were not used to. For us, we were actually in the process of starting to roll out some collaboration tools at the time this hit, and really got us to step back and think about, how do we make this effective? One of the things that the challenges that we had was to roll out a new ways of working while people were trying to keep the business running. In the home building industry, one of our biggest challenges is, how do we do sales? How do we handle people coming out to model homes, to take walkthroughs through houses? So we really pulled people together, leveraged a lot of the online tools that were available, and had people doing a lot of different types of workshops, a lot of the tools like I'll stay out of the products at this point, but looking at the collaboration tools, so we could do a lot of screen sharing and general collaboration. For us, a lot of it really was about the communication, how to get people to work together. We found we needed to be very flexible, embrace the flexibility for people to work in different ways, and communicate well. Put a lot of focus on training and communication for people to keep them engaged and to keep them thinking about new ways of working.
You know, other than the training and communication, are there other considerations that we need to think about? You know, Gary talked before about people wanting to work 24 hours a day to keep their job and the loss of productivity that comes with that. What are you guys doing?
Definitely part of the flexibility is dealing with the differences in working hours. Another challenge that many of our staff face are situations at home, children working from home, shared bandwidth is always an issue for folks. So really, we saw people working the different hours, provide the flexibility where we could with them, and let them be able to come in to continue to work and to contribute at different times where they could. Really leveraging the tools, making sure that they knew what we needed to do, how they needed to work, and really get people working in a new paradigm. As Gary spoke earlier, the difference is you have the millennials, you have the baby boomers, starting to get people working in more common ways, common tool sets and common ways to understand what are the expectations if someone sends you a chat. What is that water cooler conversation? How do you mirror that in a remote work environment? And that's a real shift for people, for some folks. And really, our teams really did a great job in coming together on that.
Fantastic. Scott, stand by because we're probably going to get back to you, but let me jump to our speaker. I want to introduce Jim, former FBI. He's now the Managing Director of Cyber Risk Services for Deloitte. Jim, welcome today.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. So Deloitte, huge operation, worldwide implications. How's COVID been for business?
So yes, Deloitte's a global professional services organization. 300,000 odd employees scattered around the world. We were an organization that was very mobile prior to the COVID, prior to the pandemic, but it really stressed the ability to have a security by design framework that actually was able to be implemented very quickly. Even though we were fairly mobile, the entire workforce, and that's a fairly large workforce, went very mobile very quickly within a few days.
So as leaders in your company, what are you doing though so that you can continue the innovation and make sure that you're having those discussions that you would otherwise have in the boardroom? But now I imagine you're having in the basement.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's also been a very enlightening last few months. So I spend my days with Deloitte, with boards of directors, audit committees, on the one hand, and then I spend a lot of time with CISOs and CIOs, having been the former FBI CIO, and it's Hunter talked about it earlier, right? It's the leadership and the communication piece where I'm able to bridge the gap between the CIOs and the CISOs and trying to tell that story to the board and provide the context to it. But then I've also spent a lot of time both internally inside Deloitte on our own systems, but also with our clients talking about this security by design framework, right? Building it in so that it's automated deployment and actually having an automated deployment managed system so we can innovate, we can very quickly, right? You come up with an idea, right? It's continuous integration, it's continuous delivery, and it's our ability to keep that safe, right? Continuous monitoring, third-party components, taking care of all of those things while you're still innovating and pulling the team together, even though you're doing it virtually.
Let me ask you, as an executive with Deloitte, I know you traveled a lot for various meetings with different colleagues around the world. Now, because you're doing it all remotely, has your day increased? Because if you were going off to Finland to speak with somebody, you're basically shut down on operations elsewhere. Are they now expecting you to work around the clock and do all these meetings where, hey, you can be in the US during regular hours and then you can work through the night as well?
Yeah, I would have to say yes. I have actually doubled the number of boards that I've been in front of. Certainly in the previous 6 months this time last year versus the 6 months this year, I have doubled the number of boards, and certainly, especially the last few weeks, spent a lot of time with a number of CISOs who are either new CISOs or just coming into that moment in their career where they're starting to talk to the board. And so I sit down with them, do a lot of strategy sessions about how to speak to the boards, what are here's the questions that I'm telling boards they should be asking of CIOs and CISOs. And yeah, because of the time change, I spent a lot of time in the Europe, Middle East, and then lots of days on Zoom in the US.
Thanks, Jim. You know, for our audience, Jim and I work together in the FBI, and it's like the good old days. We only work half a day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The other half you can do whatever you want with. But why don't you stand by? Let me jump to our next speaker, and we'll probably get back to you. But our next guest that's going to join us is Monty Node. He's a direct customer service for Horizon 3. Monty, thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me, John.
Oh, our pleasure. Hey, Monty, I want to just jump right in. You know, your company was startup. Innovation is really critical for startup companies. Any particular thoughts on that? Because most of people out there are not going to be in the big organization. They're going to be in that startup trying to make a go of it in the middle of this pandemic. Tell us, what are we doing?
So it's interesting. I have a background in the military in a big company, and now you're talking about a startup where we've got less than 20 employees. And it's interesting when startups are always viewed as agile and flexible and really fast moving. And then a pandemic pops and it really stress tests your plan and your capabilities. And as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And here we are in 2020. As a startup of less than 20 people, we're being very deliberate in our communications. And I use that word deliberate to really drive a point. Those accidental or easy conversations like Scott referenced with the water cooler, some of that easy conversation and that idea of fertilization by being in a socially conducive environment is very natural. We're used to working in these office environments. I think the office was very social, but not naturally collaborative. And that very much depends on people. And as we are trying to be deliberate, I think one of the things we're really gonna be sensitive in during this pandemic is how we deliberately develop our worker bees into leader bees. And that's something in the military, you're very much in the leader building business. And I'm really proud to say at Horizon 3, we're doing deliberate development, having meetings where we're using the Slacks, the Zooms, but we're having conversations that matter all about growing people. And that's when you're encouraging those diverse views, accelerating trust. And much like you also heard from a few others, that's where that company culture is really going to grow. And as a startup, getting that culture right early is so very imperative. And that's where we're really trying to thrive.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned your military background. It's extremely impressive. So you were a colonel in the Air Force, is that correct?
That's correct, John.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. It's greatly appreciated by all of us. Having been in the FBI, I know there's a term, combat effective, being ready for the mission, etc. So talk a little bit about that combat effective as it applies to the work world. Maybe explain what that means in the military and how it applies. And my real question is, how are we combat effective when we're working from home?
That's a great comment. So combat effective, it's interesting. It's a binary answer. Either you are or you aren't. And it's something that all of us, whether no matter what branch of service you're in, it doesn't matter when we talk about readiness, and there are certain measures, and they're based on how many people you have and what your training levels are. But truly, that doesn't measure combat effectiveness. It's interesting. In the Air Force, one of the things that they did back in the 70s after Korea and Vietnam, they implemented a flying hours program because they realized you could be a pilot, but that doesn't make you combat effective. So how do we go about building proficiency and then maintaining it with currency? So what that might mean is, hey, I see that you're gonna be flying today. Why don't you go ahead and pop chaff? So you gotta do something like every 60 days to make sure that you're current, almost like getting your driver's license every 10 years. Well, as we see with financial companies, they have to do an authorized scanning vendor review every quarter. We see that others are doing these audits and inspections every 6 months or 12 months. And I got to tell you something that how fast things are changing. You could have been at one end of this inspection on February 28th, and 3 months later into May, in an entirely different area for that kind of financial presence, as well as whether you're medical and people are accessing your online presence. And we're talking about how big of an impact COVID has had to digital transformation. Knowing that we're doing these continuous assessments in the Air Force as pilots and as cyber operations officers, that's something that we're trying to bring over into the security side, so that it's not just a one and done and you snap a chalk line and then you're good for a while. And we do these compliance things for compliance sake, where people, hey, stop what you're doing, now go do this for the inspection, then get back to work. What we're trying to do is make this easy, cost effective, and something that really almost drives your daily stand up. And I think that that's where you see combat effectiveness, is that you don't have to gear up to go do something. You're always already doing it, and it builds that muscle memory.
That's great. You know, let me just throw one last question at you before we move on. With the pandemic, in the beginning of this, I heard a lot from the business world of, you know, as soon as we get past this and we can all get back to normal. My opinion on this is I don't think this is the last pandemic we're going to see. And I see the way we're doing now as a business model probably needs to continue, at least to a certain degree, so we can transition easier. What's your thoughts in the business world? What do you tell startups that they should be doing because of those threats out there, or do you disagree?
So it's interesting when you say the word threat. Viewing the pandemic as a threat and how that's changed our work environments. There are going to be companies, much like SaaS, that are really going to take off, and they're going to find that they can be more cost effective. So when you talk about threats, I think one of the big things that the pandemic is going to invoke on us is we're going to be in a world of sensors. You're talking about temperature sensors outside buildings, things that are going to be measuring what we as humans are and where we are on a much more frequent basis. And that IoT is going to be ripe for attack. And having been able to see, while I was in the Air Force, I got to command the Air Force Hacker Group, our own America's Best. And it was incredible. And knowing what we can do and knowing what the other guys can do, I will tell you, in a pandemic world where we are more spread out and not just working from home, but geographically separated, much like we're having this DC summit right here. And I don't know how many of us are actually in DC, but this creates opportunity for others who may not think the same way we do and want to come in and disrupt the ability for people like us to collaborate, or even worse, make it look like we're saying something else that we're not. There's a lot of TED Talks out there on that kind of thing. So I think the world's more ripe for threats, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to keep us on a path on what America's all about. And that's getting after it and protecting our country and raising our kids to be something more than we are. So now we got it in front of us, and we just got to do it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Monty.
Sure.
Let's go to our last speaker that we have, Rebecca Wynn, Global CISO and Chief Privacy Officer for 24/7. Rebecca, how are you today?
I'm awesome. I'm unbelievable. How are you?
I'm great. Well, thanks for joining me, and I'm going to pick up right where we left off. Tell us just a little bit about your company to begin with, but then the big question I have is, how are you doing your job in today's world? Because it is crazy in many respects. Take it away.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to represent 247.ai. That's the website you can go to, 247.ai. We're a global leader in intent-driven content for our customers. So if you want to learn how to be more efficient and engaging with your customers in any fashion, you should be contacting 247. So that's my tidbit for everybody, that lesson to learn. Go to 247.ai. So today's world, to go to your other question, it's interesting because I'm always brought into a company to be a disruptor, to be a changer, to take them to the next level of excellence. And that's the reason why 24/7 had me brought in. It was like any other company. So the pandemic, to be honest with you, was awesome for me. It was awesome for me because it made my roadmap accelerate. So it was awesome for me. People probably don't think about that, but if you think about from a privacy and compliance and risk management and security and things like that, it really brought us to the forefront of the conversations again. Not saying that we're not important to companies, but they have to look about how are you going to get new business. And so when I speak on these panels, I tell people that and they're like, what? I go, no, you think about it. You're in more conversations because you need to be in more conversations as you take this globally. We were able to move very, very quickly because besides me, we had already brought in other global leaders with this already on our roadmap. We just accelerated it. So it was interesting for me that as we spoke to other clients of ours, they're like, hey, Rebecca and a couple other leaders, how are you guys doing that? How are you able to be, move so quick and agile and be very smart of this? Because we were brought in to be able to do that. We were able to accelerate. So for 24/7, we are well positioned for our clients, and we moved very, very quickly through that. I also run our business continuity, and I was named the pandemic leader. So I think for me, that also assisted me a bit. But we're able to move very, very quickly, grab new business and things like that. So we were set up pretty well for that. Hopefully that answered your question.
You did, but I want to follow up. So in this brave new world, what kind of employees are you looking for to get the mission accomplished? And where do you find them?
Well, it's interesting. People go ahead and look at me on LinkedIn, and that's where you can reach me on LinkedIn. They'll see that I have a lot of certifications, and I have a lot more that I don't show. I was a government contractor for 8 years. Systems around the world I certified. And at times I needed to become the lead architect or senior principal security engineer because it is what it is. So thank everybody here for their service. And I'm proud of the work that I did for the 8 years that I serviced that. But with it, it was funny. I actually learned that there's two sets of people. There's people who have certifications because, hey, I've been doing this and I'm going to have that piece of paper so you can have the assurance that I really know what I'm talking about or that I have hands-on experience and I can do it. Then they have other people out there who just go and they take a class real quickly to attempt to get a certification. So I tell people to be very careful. It's not just about book knowledge, it's applied knowledge. And so at this point in my career, I've switched a lot more to applied knowledge. Does the people actually know what does that mean? Yes, things have to be known, they have to be documented, but are you implementing them effectively? How are you measuring it? How are you managing it? Is there a better way to do it from the company? Is there a better strategic way to do that for the company? Are you really showing positive return on investment? But more importantly, what's your return on efficiency with that? So I really look for people who have strong critical, skills that they can actually really do a root cause analysis of an issue, but then they have the broader perspective on what does it mean for my full environment, for the company. And those are bigger skills. And I do see, even though I do adjunct faculty work as well, people aren't being taught. They're not being taught the skills of critical thinking, how to go ahead and speak effectively. We talk very much so about metrics. I hate garbage metrics. What are really metrics that actually help you take the company to the next level? And which ones are just really, I had 10,000 bots that went and asked me if my website was there. Really, is that a threat? Right, but we have people do that. So I really need people who are gonna think. And I think that's what we're missing. I also need people who, can you actually create effective PowerPoint presentations? Can you go ahead and use Excel and Word and all these other things very effectively? And then if you get a tool, tools are great, right? Tools augment your staff, but are you training your tool? If you're an administrator, do you understand that tool front and back and how to effectively manage it? And if you don't know how to effectively manage it, do you know how to articulate that to me so I can go ahead and get professional services hours, or me, what I do, my vendors are augmented staff, they work with me to go ahead and train my staff up. And I would encourage you that you shouldn't always pay for that. So the critical thinking is even more than the certification. Certifications, in my professional opinion, are starting to become a dime a dozen. Maybe it's a penny a dozen anymore. And so I don't look at them solely anymore. And I said, that's a paradigm shift over the last several years for me.
Very good. Well, you know what, let me throw it back to, I'm going to call on both Scott and Jim Turgel for this next question. We've talked about all the things we have to do. Rebecca touched on it a little bit about the pandemic having been a benefit in some ways, despite all the tragedy that comes with it. But tell us, with your businesses, and I'll start with you, Scott, see any benefits, anything in particular that's helped your company?
Absolutely. With the change, really one of the biggest things, like Rebecca was saying, is it really helps us look at our roadmaps and where we're going. I know from our standpoint, we had a great roadmap laid out, but we were dealing with a lot of resistance on timeframes. The business looks at what do we need to do from the business standpoint? And their answer is always, well, don't change too much on the back end. Be careful moving this forward. One of the things with the pandemic is everyone's world changed overnight and we went remote. Suddenly that reluctance of business people to accept change was a big shift that we saw. It really helped us accelerate a lot of our timelines. So things that from a security perspective that we knew we wanted to move forward, we needed to get to, suddenly everyone was perking up and listening, saying, that makes sense, let's go ahead and put that in. It's a new world, people accept the change. They'll change their processes, relook at what they're doing as they realize that the world is just different. So we can move the change, we can accelerate our timelines and put in a lot of those controls and try to get some of those good metrics that we need to have out there. Really, as long as we communicated well with our business employees, let them know what was coming, we could roll it out. They were willing to have a few of the little bumps that may come in. But one example, we took a 6-month timeline and moved it down to 2 weeks. From a security, from a CISO perspective, I was thrilled. Things that I was standing up on the mountaintop and shouting, we need to move these ways, suddenly we could do. And that's definitely a big benefit.
That's great. You know, one of the things that I noticed was in dealing in the C-suite, suddenly I became the smartest person in the room. Now, whether or not that's actually true is to be debated, but I seem to have the answers everybody was looking for. And for years, always trying to elevate yourself, that you'd be an equal in that C-suite. Now it came to people depending upon what I was saying to be able to get business to operate, and really being able to leverage this time for all of us that we're being heard is our opportunity to then plan and be able to share with the rest of the C-suite where we need to go forward and why things are so important in our cyber world.
Just quickly to add on to that, the whole key is that we had to make sure that what we were rolling out did enable business, and that made the difference. And that's where we can build the credibility, is because we were allowing them to do things they didn't think they would be able to do.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Jim. I'm going to throw it over to you. And with a little bit of time, we only have about 2 minutes left. Why don't you wrap for us? Tell us a little bit of what's been the big benefit for a company as large as Deloitte.
Well, John, thanks. You and I have been evangelists for, I think, the last couple of decades, certainly in the FBI. And then once we retired from the FBI and in meeting out with commercial entities, right, about cyber awareness and risk mitigation, and trying to educate boards and C-suites about the threat actors out there and how they think and what they do. And I've had to do that both internally inside Deloitte, and certainly I do it every day with boards and audit committees. But this pandemic actually showed the need for certainly boards and C-suites who had been putting this off, that this is a real deal, right? It's not necessarily a technology induced problem, right? It's a public health crisis, right? But you can use technology, and if you actually paid attention in the last, year or two or a few years about the things that we've been talking about in being agile and security by design and building security into your cyber awareness and your risk of mitigation and your ability to have resilience and response. If you did half of those things, your organization was much better off when this thing hit. And so it really showed that we were right, both internally, all the things that we've done in Deloitte to actually improve our own internal systems. And then that allowed us to be that larger, I think, louder evangelist to our companies out there and our clients, because we're living that every day, right? We're making certain that we are doing that. And that is an absolute perfect way to sell that piece of, here's what we're doing, here's how we're doing it, here's how we did it internally inside our organization, and here's what we can do for you.
Fantastic. This, as I said before, I don't think this is the last pandemic we're going to see. It's not going to be the last public health crisis we're going to have. Hopefully, we'll be able to manage those things, at least on a business level, very smoothly in the future, because we've had a lot of experience with the COVID environment. With that, I want to thank everybody. Boy, the time flies when you've got great information and great panelists like we have. Hunter, I'm going to throw it back to you for the rest of the enjoyable morning.
Hey, John, great panel, rock star. Thanks so much, Scott, James, Monty, and Rebecca. Hey, before you all go, just one last comment, and just a real brief statement by each of you. Start with Rebecca. Most exciting time to be a tech leader, and maybe a tip on your career. How'd you do it? How'd you get to your level? Rebecca, you go first.
Keep persevering, keep moving forward, be a better person tomorrow than you were today. And security and privacy by design and default, always.
Excellent, thank you. James?
You know, being the CIO of the FBI was the most gratifying technology position I've ever had. It humbled me, and I had to learn, you know, at that point in time, it was 110, 112-year-old organization, really about what technology means, both old and new.
Excellent, thanks. Scott?
Just staying broad and focused, and always keeping an eye on where the business needs to go. Think as a business person, not as a technology person, and help move the company forward.
Excellent. Monty?
When all else fails, listen. And so I really want to thank the panelists. There was some great conversation going on today. I learned a lot from y'all. Thanks.
Hey guys, best panel that we've ever pulled off, John, in the pandemic for on security. Thanks so much. Great job, guys. Hopefully you can stay with us. Okay, next up we have Crisis in Career. This is a hallmark signature panel we've been running for 14 years and probably 5 years in the security space. Welcome our search executives, Aileen Alexandra. Aileen is a senior client partner at Korn Ferry. Aileen, welcome to the program.
Hey, Hunter, thanks. Good to see you.
Great. Oh, there you are. Good to see you. Hey, a little context about your background. You have a little bit of military experience as well, right?
I do, but I'm not alone. I see Stephen here. Yeah, I started out in the Army as a communications officer and then spent some time working in national security and defense.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for your service. So, Aileen, what is it about today that makes it very interesting to be a tech leader, a security executive? And what does the board and the C-suite want next from their next CISO?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Well, first of all, I think if you're in cyber and you're in tech, I mean, you are in a very hot space right now. You know, we've talked about this the last few months, but since early March, I think things only got heightened. You know, we were initially sort of managing crisis, so business continuity. I know we had some folks here from the Bureau, but continuity of operations, getting everybody settled was front and center. So having those leadership capabilities in terms of, you know, acting calm and cool under pressure was there. And then I think what we've all realized is our businesses are evolving. The dependency on technology, securing the business, securing our data, our IP, again, has only been heightened from a business, from a C-suite to a board prerogative. I think in terms of, there's a lot of activity. I know Michael and Stephen will probably also reinforce this. It's been busy, probably the busiest we've seen since 2017 in terms of activity in the market. You know, leaders are looking for the tech savvy, the adaptability. We heard this just a bit ago, understanding the needs of the business, being able to influence, work with the internal stakeholders, be able to communicate effectively. I mean, those things, you know, today are really important.
And being able to communicate effectively with the CEO and board.
That's right. That's right. Multiple audiences and speak in business speak as well as risk speak.
Excellent. Great. Aileen, thank you so much for coming on. We'll circle back to you in just a minute. Steve and Spagnuolo. Steve, great. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Hunter. How are you?
Good. Give us an update. What are you seeing out there right now?
Well, as Aileen mentioned, and Michael, I'm sure will say, from our perspective, it's been very active. There was a little bit of a lull early on because, at least from a business development standpoint, you really weren't, you know, calling on new business during early days of COVID. But yeah, a lot of inbounds. When I was on here over the course of the months, I was referencing the CISO as the beacon of light in the organization, for all the reasons that Aileen just kind of referenced and everybody else has kind of referenced. It really has been an opportunity to kind of, and it already kind of was there from like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but further cemented the CISO or the CSO, as the case may be, as a impactful player in the C-suite, and really for a reference and a asset for the board as well. Directed to the audience, not for folks here, but kind of, where we're at now, it'd be great to kind of say, finally got there, kind of take the pack off and kind of just take a breather. You got to really just kind of keep plowing ahead. There's a lot to do. I mean, 5G is a huge risk exposure scenario, great opportunity, but risk exposure. Ransomware is just kind of off the charts. I've heard it referenced as kind of the global digital pandemic. And so just a whole lot to do. We have, I'm blanking on who's, I'm sorry, with everybody kind of muted here, but our friend in Colorado who's our quantum guy. I mean, AI and quantum, that's kind of focus forward type thing for, really the savvy players, because really not to belittle, I mean, COVID was a huge crisis at, healthcare, of course, but certainly a challenge for everybody. But ideally your organization, and it's not just on you, was kind of already oriented towards digital transformation. Digital transformation has been with us for 10 years. So it shouldn't have been, it was just kind of accelerated that. So kind of, we're there now, kind of onto the next thing almost.
When you think about it, we've been innovating for decades and centuries in the country, in the U.S. And this just put it really on jet fuel, right?
Right.
Excellent. We'll circle back to you in just 1 second. Next up, Michael Piacente. Michael, welcome to the program.
Hey, Hunter. Hi, everyone.
Thanks
nice
for your notes here. Hey, question for you. What do you see happening with the CISO role in 2020 and 2021 and beyond? Give us an update.
Yeah. It's good to see everyone. I'm not military, but I did grow up right outside of Annapolis, so the crew here is a lot of my peeps. So I appreciate hearing from everyone. That was great. I kind of call this the year of the CISO. It's a year of many things that some we want to remember, some we want to forget. But nearly every aspect we're seeing nearly every aspect of position is really being escalated and intensified, from the communication, the audience that the CISOs are being brought to and being asked to communicate to the reporting structure. Really a lot of shifts in the reporting structure. A lot of it has to do with verticals and the size of company. The scope has really changed. Everything from very, very positive there's some negatives. There's a little bit of adding to the cul-de-sac of technical debt for a CISO. Just putting more information in, more responsibilities, but not a lot of access to budget and resources. But for the most part, it's been positive. And then things like hiring trends and location, it's really opened up quite a bit from our perspective. As last year we had maybe 2 or 3 of our searches out of 20 or 25 CISO searches, really open to remote location. And now we're seeing double that. So companies are really realizing that if they just open up, they can see a better perspective on talent. And also for the teams that they hire. Compensation's leveled off a little bit, but it's still pretty, it's coming, I think it's coming to a point where people can say, yes, that is the typical CISO compensation in this vertical at this size of a company. We can actually label it now. And I think the other thing that we're seeing just in the news as of late is a lot about protections. What are the protections that the CISO is getting, both financially and also from a legality perspective, to make sure that they're not being, kind of hung out there as the fall person. And so I think that just overall, both positives and negatives, but mostly a positive increase in the scope. We also are seeing, in 2020, a substantial burnout and stress rate. It is a real thing. We could do a whole session on that, but it's unfortunate. There's a lot of people going through a lot of tough times, even with great positions, that just getting burned out. And so I think that 2020 will come to this, and we'll look at 2021 and say, okay, let's do a reality check. Where is the position sitting in the scope of the executive team? What's the impact, and what resources and sponsorship do we need to give this these kind of superpower heroes to be successful. So that's what we're seeing here.
Hey, Michael, you folks have done a thought leadership piece in this, right?
We have, yeah, well, more of, it was really meant to be a compensation survey, but also a reporting structure survey in this as well. So we kind of talked a lot about the trends we were seeing in there.
How can people get a handle on that report?
Yeah, sure. I'll actually send you the link, and everyone, it's on our website too. We have a couple different versions for each year, and you can kind of see the different trends, both for CISOs as well as chief security officers who are really on the physical side as well, which is another part of our business. But yeah, I'll make sure everyone here gets the link. They can certainly participate and also see it. So.
Excellent. And thanks for coming on the program. You've been a great fan and supporter for years. Great to see you. Hey, Aileen, back to you. Let's talk to us a little bit about the digital practice area that you're involved with, I think down in Philadelphia at Korn Ferry.
Sure. Yeah. So I spent 13 years in Washington, D.C., but finally boomeranged back home. So in addition to my business hat here in terms of co-leading the cybersecurity practice, I also lead our Philadelphia hub here at Korn Ferry. It's one of our larger offices in North America, but it's also, Hunter, I think you're alluding to our KF Digital business that we have. So people want me to say we're drinking our own champagne, but we're gritty in Philly. So I'll say we're eating our own dog food. So when you talk about transformation and, digital acceleration, we too, from a business prerogative, are going through that and evolving how we deliver to our clients. So, some of those capabilities we have are, leveraging our own IP, our own data, our own SaaS platform in terms of how you recruit, how you develop. We're seeing a lot of activity in the assessment, succession, and development space. And Michael, again, with your research that you all are doing, we also have some capability around that. How do you pay and reward? So it's been humbling to wear that additional hat, but to also have, we're all talking about empathy, but to empathize with those technology leaders out there that are, living the evolution of their business.
Excellent. Great. You enjoying it?
I am. Yeah. And I'm back to my roots, people first, mission always. So, I love serving clients, but I also love being, more of a guide and facilitator with our own people and helping us find the right path for our talent as well. So like I said, again, you say we're drinking our own champagne, but, we're doing as much as we're consulting.
Excellent. Hey, how can people get in touch with you, Aileen, if they are interested in getting on your radar screen?
Yeah, it's funny. My past, I was never on LinkedIn, and I'm sure some of the others who worked in government would probably say the same. But and Hunter, you and your team have done, just a phenomenal job getting ahead of things in these last few months with the thought leadership and the engagement on LinkedIn. So I'm there, pretty engaged. So send me a note on that front or a message, or aileen.alexander@kornferry.com.
Oh, excellent. Great, Aileen. Hey, one kind of comment, what does winning look like as a CISO in this environment we're in right now? Aileen, you first, and then let's go down the line.
Wow, winning. I got to talk in the winning way. I think winning is staying nimble, right? I think it's demonstrating that ability to look out and to anticipate, right? I think we've talked a lot this year about adaptability, navigation. There were some comments just a bit ago around not just communication, but listening to really help, bring folks on your team forward. So for me, a CISO's winning when they're developing others in terms of meeting their potential. I also think, we're more intentional than we've ever been in being inclusive leaders. So I think CISOs and all leaders, chief security officers can really, be on the forefront of that as well. That is a behavior. And if you own that behavior, you'll have impact.
Awesome. Great. Good to see you. Steve, same idea. What does a successful leader winning in this environment look like?
I'm sorry, Hunter, is that for me?
Yes.
Okay. It's not a loaded question. It's just a wide open question. But I would say, For purposes here in our timeline, I would say achieving a state of mutual understanding. And what I mean by that is an understanding with the board and your fellow senior executives where, you know, you understand the business, you understand the business units within that business. You forge those relationships across with the business unit leaders. And so there's that understanding. They know that you understand the business, and equally, you've been able to impart that what you do as a CISO, it's not a zero-sum game. It's an imperfect science. It's basically day-to-day figuring out where can I afford to get burned least, and really kind of then focusing on the more important things. And also, ideally, having that kind of risk cost-based analysis discussion where, you know, you're able to achieve in plain speak and communicate the risk consequences, i.e. the cost consequences of, you know, we get hit here, we get hit here, we get hit here. And there's an understanding, and then there's a decision around those discussions. So I think achieving that understanding in a kind of a, you know, from a pragmatic standpoint is kind of winning, you know, from a CISO standpoint.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. And Steve, how can people get in touch with you?
Yep. Stanton Chase, we're a global executive search firm, leadership advisory firm. We're all over the web. Easiest thing is just an email, spagnuolo@stantonchase.com. And you can just Google it. I won't, too many vowels in my name here to spell it out for everybody, so you can figure it out.
You want to put it in the chat there for everyone, Steve?
Sure, I'll do that.
There you go. Hey, Mike, what's your wrap us up?
Yeah, sure. I have a lot of vowels in my name too. I agree with everything Stephen and Aileen said. I would actually break it into 4 areas right now. Again, 2020. One, know your superpower. Every CISO has a superpower, even if you consider yourself a deep generalist. You are excellent. For instance, a lot of our searches are in the cloud security space, product level security. Really show your wins, you know, express your wins, know your details, know your stories, know your narrative in there, and really bring that. You know, most clients that we have are working with are really looking for someone that's very deep in one particular area or can tell a very strong story in that particular area. They don't expect the CISO to be amazing in every single area. But know your superpower. Every CISO has one, or maybe even multiple superpowers, but just know it. The other one is just to know that when you walk into an environment now, or you're in an environment, that you will be the creator and the driver of the security program. We're beyond the years now of just executing on someone else's program and what they hoped it looked like. They want someone, a leader right now. Companies want a leader to be driving that program, to be creating it, to be the inventor of that program, and to carry it forward and to present that. And then the third area is definitely sales enablement. It's probably the biggest leap that we've seen, not just handling the incoming and outgoing questionnaires and doing that kind of sales enablement. That's certainly important, but it's been added on to. We've been stacked on actually being involved in the automation of sales narratives, getting on the phone with clients on a much more regular basis, being part of the closing process. And this is the sales enablement activities we're seeing. And then finally is kind of hiring and management, sort of being that best empathetic manager, being the most efficient hiring. You know, hiring's been something, it's very tough to do during COVID. Most of the time, the client doesn't meet the candidate. A lot of time, the candidate doesn't meet the client. And if you think about it, the candidate has to figure out an entire culture to figure out if they're a match. The hiring manager has to figure out if this one strategic individual is going to be great for their team. And so both have challenges, but as a CISO in the hiring capacity, you really want to be empathetic and understanding what everyone around you is going through. So those would be the 4 things for success, what I would call winning. If you can pull those 4 things off in harmony, then you've got yourself a winning recipe.
Hey, great points, Michael. Great to see you too. Thanks again for coming on the program. And
thank you.
Let's get a link to the report. So I think everyone would be interested in that. Maybe it'll be part of a write-up Tom Hoffman, our research director, can piece together. And Steve, thanks again. Aileen, great to see you all. Stay in touch, y'all.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Next up, securing the future of work. I want to welcome John Iannarelli back to the program. John, take it away.
Thanks, Hunter. Well, we've had a lot of discussion about how COVID has changed everything that we're doing in the cyber world. CISOs now have new challenges and everybody is remote. It's no longer about securing the perimeter of the building, our remote locations. Now every location is a remote location. Security execs need to be talking to the C-suite. Panels are having discussions with how do we secure this future workplace. And that's what our group is going to talk to you about today. I've got a number of great speakers on this panel, and I'm going to start off with Ben Johnson, CTO and co-founder of Obsidian Security. Ben, take a moment. Tell us about your company. And then I want to ask you, what are the threats? What kind of threat vectors and attack vectors are you seeing?
Yeah, so thank you, John, and thank you, Hunter, and everybody. Excited to be here. So Obsidian Security, we're a vendor, we're a technology provider, defending your SaaS, really focused on Office 365, G Suite, Salesforce, Workday, all those business critical applications. And so, as you can imagine, we've seen a tremendous uptick in concern for these kinds of platforms in 2020, and really, I think it comes down to a few areas around. External adversaries, first and foremost. Most people are concerned with people getting into your accounts and in your environments that shouldn't be there. Then secondly, you care about insider threat, and I don't want to take the whole panel, so we can always come back to some of this, but insider threat where you're concerned that just maybe people are taking information, especially in 2020 when there's a lot of changing, corporate environments, a lot of people getting laid off, et cetera. We've seen an uptick in insider threat. And then data leaks, right? Just people accidentally oversharing files or things like that. So I could go on and on about SaaS, but also other parts of the environment. But yeah, it's a whole new world that I think we've been hearing about in these other panels and commentary. And it's just, kind of new surface area for teams to defend. So I think it's a bit of a challenge.
Are there any particular applications or programs in that people are specifically worried about? Is there anything one more than other? I mean, we've heard about the bombing of different communication platforms, etc. But Zoom, for example, has done a great job in putting in security protections that if people simply use them, it's one of the safest platforms out there. What are the things they need to be worried about?
Yeah, again, this could be all day. I think first and foremost, security often doesn't have a seat at the table when it comes to SaaS, or at least they didn't before. These SaaS applications just sort of show up in your environments. Maybe IT is not even involved, like sales or marketing or HR brought in Workday or whatever it was. So let alone security having access, like IT might not even have sort of purview and access. So a seat at the table. And then secondly, just how people are getting into these environments. Is it multi-factor authentication, single sign-on? Some of it is kind of cybersecurity 101, but it's still a struggle for everybody, especially large companies. And then, yeah, I mean, it tends to be the platforms that have either a lot of your employee population, so think of email and Office 365, G Suite, those kinds of systems, has customer data or kind of sensitive information like maybe a Salesforce, or it could be something like you're talking about, like a Zoom or a Box or some of these other applications where you're sharing upcoming financial numbers, or you're sharing sensitive healthcare data, or you're recording the board meeting, which is supposed to be confidential. So yeah, there's just a lot of concerns, and I think really it comes down to educating employees of just these new risks, because most employees have used these tools, but they don't really understand the risks here.
Good advice, absolutely. Ben, thank you very much. Let me jump to our next speaker. We're short on time today for this one. I want to make sure we get everyone in. So Wanda Jones-Heath, CISO for the United States Air Force, another person. Thank you very much for your service. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be where you are, and then talk to me about some of these remote working challenges that you're dealing with.
Hi, and thank you to HMG and Hunter and the team for the invite. So far, I've enjoyed a lot of discussions and can definitely resonate with the challenges that we all face. As a career civilian, 30 years as a civil servant, I've had the opportunity to be in a technical field worked my way up through leadership from an intern to now to a senior executive. And so sitting in the seat of a CISO has been fascinating. We are, dealing with challenges that we couldn't imagine even 1 year ago. And to be able to continue to push ahead, be resilient in everything we do so that the mission can still go on. Mission failure is not an option. As our new chief, CSAF 22, General Brown says it eloquently, accelerate, change, or lose. This is a no-fail operation. We have to ensure that we protect our networks, that we protect our data, and that we provide what the customers, in our case, the airmen, need to continue to do their job and do it well. Lots of challenges, but I think we have done a tremendous job. We partner with the industry, we partner amongst ourselves and within the DoD to make things happen and happen quickly. I think we surprised ourselves. And we are doing just great things, but we all know there's more work to do.
Well, Wanda, let me tell you, of everybody here today, you probably have the most responsibility. I mean, if a company goes out of business, it's tragic, it's terrible, people lose their jobs. We're talking our national security here, and we depend upon the Air Force. For those who are not in the military, may not understand how much more it is than planes flying and all the different aspects of keeping us safe. Okay, so given that, A, you're probably not paid enough, but B, what's your biggest area of focus? What are you keying in on right now with so many people working remotely?
Definitely our infrastructure, ensuring that number one, it's sound, that it's secure, and that it's available. Once that occurs, then making sure that it is protected to the extent possible. We have folks all over the globe, all over the world, the United States, that need access. If they can't have access, perhaps planes don't take off. And we can't be in that situation. Ensuring that our folks are trained in this new environment. We can't turn back. We pivoted. We've seen the success of being able to provide world-class networks, world-class support, and we have to continue in that fashion. And ensuring that our airmen are ready means that perhaps they have to have a new way of doing business. So one of the areas, huge areas I'm focusing on is breaking down those barriers. When folks talk about cybersecurity, we want to be an enabler. And so to do that, we have to partner. We have to be honest with the risk. We have to weigh the risk against the possible threat and the adversary. And so in doing that, barriers in policy and procedures, we proved, as we pivoted to our new environment, that we have to change our policies that perhaps have been prohibiting us from moving forward faster than we thought we could.
That's great. I will tell you, I remember from my FBI days, some of the programs were so restrictive in what we could do. I literally could not get on the internet and go to the FBI's website from the FBI office, FBI computer, because it was restricted. I'm glad to hear that things are changing. It's for the better for everybody. Stand by, because I'm definitely coming back to you. Let me go to our next speaker, Jenny Menna. She's the Deputy CISO for Business Security of U.S. Bank. Jenny, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and then I want to ask you, what's the threats that you're seeing in our financial institutions?
So, we continue to see the full array of threat actors in the financial sector, everyone from criminals to the nation states that may not like U.S. policy. But one thing that we're really looking at right now that's been affecting our supply chain more than the financial sector proper is ransomware. We've seen ransomware evolve from, we've seen this for years, right? Where it was hitting individuals, maybe your local doctor's office, locking up the data, and asking for some small amount of money. as ransom, but what we've seen is it's hitting larger and larger companies, becoming more and more sophisticated. And, you know, to steal Microsoft's term, it's now human-operated ransomware, really kind of the APT of ransomware, where they're getting into an organization, you know, they're low and slow, looking for those crown jewels of information, and then either locking up that information and demanding a ransom, or as an alternative saying, okay, if you're not going to pay, I'm going to exfiltrate that information, post it to the internet, and embarrass you that way, right? Maze is posting information all the time. And so, you know, we are seeing increasingly large companies in our supply chain, both third parties and fourth parties, that are falling victim. And so we, as large financial institutions, every time that happens, are looking at everything from, okay, is there any sort of connectivity? Is there any potential for movement into our network based on the relationship with this company, right? We're worried about, do they have any of our information? Is there a confidentiality potential risk here? And then there's the, you know, the availability, the operational risk of what's going to happen if this company can't perform the service, provide the data, do whatever it is that we pay them to do, because they're down with ransomware. The latest statistic I saw was up to 15 days was the new average to recover. And that's if we're comfortable with them after that 15 days, you know, how do you do that analysis about being comfortable? And so we've spent a lot of time, you know, over the past few months, in addition to getting everybody working from home safely, and dealing with our contractors, right, working from home safely with us. How do we handle this third-party ransomware risk so that every time it happens, and it seems to be a couple times a week that there's a company that you have some form of relationship with, going through that analysis, but then also really looking at ourselves and saying, okay, we as large financial institutions, we have very sophisticated cybersecurity programs. We generally feel pretty good about them. But these bad guys are getting really good. They're getting, as I said, much more sophisticated. Every time people pay the ransom, they can use that money to invest in their infrastructure. And so we've done a real deep dive within our institution. We've used the MITRE ATT&CK information. We've looked at the 5 largest kind of ransomware families that we're seeing now. We've mapped those, again, using MITRE ATT&CK against the tools that we have, you know, making sure that we then have the configuration set properly, that we're using the aspects of the tools where the vendors tell us they address those different parts. And then really doing a deep dive on, okay, this is what we know we have, but what are there areas where you can continue to improve? It might be something as simple as, you know, have you looked at your incident response SOPs? And this is a place where security can intersect with IT in terms of those immutable offline backups. You know, do you have something in place so that the bad guys can't go from the, you know, into the offline backup and back? Because if they're in both, your protective measures have not really helped there, and you're working with the incident response with the lawyers. You know what you would do. Have you had those exercises? And again, updated all of those playbooks as these threat actors continue to mature, and we see more and more companies affected. You know, as more and more of us are in both the cloud and on-prem, are we sure that there can't be lateral movement between those two environments if you had an actor? And then people will always talk about network segmentation. Well, what does that mean? Does it need to be, you know, truly segmenting different systems, or can you use access, right? And that's something that we're looking at, is how can you use access to create segmentation as well. And then, you know, very basic, you know, a couple other things that we're looking at are, you know, intelligence sharing. Lots of intelligence out there about these threat actors. How do we get that and make sure that it's very quickly, those IOCs go into our detection tools, getting our red team and our blue team working together in purple team exercises to really test, again, as these techniques morph and evolve, making sure that we're ready to detect them. Looking at ways that ransomware can propagate, right? Things like PowerShell. Do you have the latest versions? Do you have the right processes in place? And then it always comes back to, right, the employees. Are you training your employees? Are you fish testing the employees to make sure that they aren't that weakest link? So lots of activity. I know we are not alone. I'm on the board at the FSISAC, and so I spent a lot of time talking to our peers as well. But really a huge issue for, I think, all of us in all industries this year.
Wow, Jenny, lots of great information. So thank you. Hang tight for just a minute. Let me throw it over to our last speaker, Laura Whitt-Winyard. She's the Global CISO for DLL. Laura, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, I'm Laura Whitt-Winyard. Unfortunately, I cannot start my meeting because it says that the host has stopped my meeting or stopped my video.
Oh, there you are.
Can you see me now?
We can see you now.
Fantastic. So hi, I'm Laura Whitt-Winyard. I'm the global CISO of DLL Group, and I'm responsible for cybersecurity in 37 countries.
Fantastic. Well, with that, then you've got a massive issue with all the work from home employees. What's the risk? What's the highest risk that you're seeing?
Well, I think it's a little bit varied. If you think about last year, I think the most recent Cybersecurity Insiders survey said that the average company had maybe 1 to 25% of their staff working remotely. This year, it's 75 to 100%, right? So the scariest part of that was only 25 or 29% of those polled were prepared. And so what you see with the biggest risks are obviously user awareness, the home or public Wi-Fi, wherever people are working, are not as secured as they would be in the office. The sharing of personal devices or personal devices on the home network. Basically what this means is, all of it equals an amplified attack vector. And now that, of those people polled, 84% of those polled said they were likely to continue this increased work from home. So this is not going to go away. There is no going back to the old way. So those risks that I mentioned are here to stay.
Well, with that, tell us, what should we do? What advice, if you had to give a piece of advice to everybody out there today, how can we best protect against those risks?
Well, I would say there's two things. Everyone always says, the user is our biggest risk. So awareness training, not the once a year check the box security awareness training, but just in time training, point training, targeted training to different groups. Different groups are susceptible to different things, like your accounts payable group versus your marketing group versus your IT group. So very targeted training. I think it was mentioned before from Jenny, really up your simulated phishing campaigns. I mean, I would recommend every other month and quarterly at the least. And then finally, protect the data because the data is now going everywhere, way more than it was last year. People are accelerating their move to cloud. People are working from many, many different locations. You have people trying to figure out easier ways because they don't like the VPN solution. So they're trying to use like remote desktop or team viewer or, all these different things, or let me just send this over to my Gmail so it's easier to print and, all these different things. So really target on your data and protect that wherever it goes.
That's great advice. I still find it shocking, all the people out there who haven't thought about backing up their information. Then they become a ransomware victim and they have nowhere to go. So good things to know, because the point I take away from you is that there is no going back to the way it was. This is the way it's in the future. We're going to continue to see that. So
yeah, this is definitely the new normal.
It's absolutely the new normal. Our time goes by quickly in these panels. I've got just a minute left. I want to go back to you. We talked because of the significance of your work. Generally, with all the threats, the work from home and everything else, what do you worry about most? And what do you need to do to make sure that your company, your business, the government, the Air Force is effective?
I would actually mention two things. One being just having visibility across your network. We have folks accessing their, day-to-day jobs, their systems and applications from everywhere, inside the wire and outside the wire. And so having that visibility from end to end and understanding where your gaps are, understanding where your high-vis assets are, so that you can protect them at a different level. You can't protect everything, and so the strategy must be protect the crown jewels. And so we are definitely focused on that. And then Laura mentioned something about training in our typical cybersecurity training And so ensuring that our airmen are prepared, you know, the Air Force is definitely transforming to a digital environment more so than ever before. And so having the airmen with the right set of skills, not just cybersecurity skills, but other skills that we need across the Air Force. And so we are definitely focused on digital talent, our digital university, and trying to have those types of training available outside and inside the cybersecurity area.
Well, thank you. I'll sleep a little better at night knowing that the helm of this. We appreciate it. Panel, great job. One great nation once again. Hunter, take it away.
John, awesome job. And I want to thank everyone, Laura, Jenny, Wanda, Ben, great job. Hey, one final quote or comment. Start with Laura. Best time ever to be a tech professional, and you're really excited now. Is it really challenging, Laura?
I've always enjoyed the challenge. That's why I've been in security for 20 years.
Nice.
It is a very exciting time. It's also, I think as I've said once before, it's a good time to kind of get the budget that you need for certain security aspects, if you know what I mean.
There you heard it. Go for the money, folks. Great. I love it. Thanks so much, Laura. Jenny, you're up.
Well, I will say the plus side of all of this is we are not bored sitting home going crazy watching news 24 hours a day worrying about the pandemic. We are busy at work. We definitely have a purpose, which I think is so critical as we talk about the soft side, right? Keeping our employees focused and healthy, having a real mission to focus on during these difficult times. And again, keeping people busy with meaningful work. We have had no shortage of that in the past 6+ months.
Thanks, Jenny. This is a rock star panel. Wanda, final comment?
Just having fun. And, you know, as mentioned in the previous panel, the superpower for the Department of Air Force is innovation. You know, we have to continue to transform no matter what.
Love it. Great job, Wanda. Thanks again for your service. And Ben, you know, final comment, what's unique about Obsidian? And a little comment, Obsidian is a great partner of ours, I believe a Greylock company as well. Obsidian is in our marketplace. You can learn more about Obsidian in the marketplace. Ben?
Yeah, you plug us in, rapid time to value, and you start getting much better security of your SaaS. Try to make it easy for you. And just to add on to the comments that the other panelists made, I think it's just a tremendous time of collaboration between IT and security around business continuity. And I think everyone's kind of woken up to what's at risk. So it should be a great time for security going forward.
And by the way, Ben, is a second-time founder and a rock star visionary out of the Valley. So thanks for being part of the conference today. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great program, guys. On to our next panel. Next up, we have Leading Courageously to Secure the Nimble Enterprise, Rocco Grillo, a legendary rock star himself. He's the Managing Director of Global Cyber Risk Services at Alvarez and Marsal. Rocco, welcome to the program.
Hey, Hunter. Thanks for having me. Great to be here and continuing the roadshow.
Take it away.
Okay. All right. Got my colleague Jeff. Do we have Snehal on? I saw him earlier. There he is. Okay. Hey, great. Thanks, Snehal. Hi, everyone. As Hunter mentioned, my name is Rocco Grillo, Managing Director, Alvarez and Marsal, oversee our global cyber risk and incident response investigation service. We've got a high bar to meet after everything that we've seen in the last sessions and so forth. But to piggyback off of the last panel, actually most of them, we're going to cover a lot of the things that they touched on. But really, when you think about what's going on the last 6 months, we've seen phishing spikes, we've seen ransomware attacks, we've seen business email compromises, fraud, attacks on some of the largest third-party service providers, and we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the nation state attacks, whether it's attacking companies or just going directly after R&D and vaccines that are being developed. With that whole theme, as much as it seems like doom and gloom, the piece that we're going to touch on today, what are companies doing to pivot in the wake of this adversity or these challenges that we've taken on? Even further to that, a lot of the CIOs, most of the HMG summits we've done have been CIO innovations. have gotten the accolades for in the blink of an eye, going from hundreds or thousands of employees in the corporate environment to flipping the switch and going work from home, work from anywhere. What we're going to tackle in this session really is looking at how companies have pivoted, embraced evolving technologies, not only in the wake of the challenges that have come on, but really trying to help us accelerate digital innovations. With me, I've got a couple of industry lead-in colleagues. First up, we've got Jeff Miller from Honeywell. Jeff, if you could give us a little on your background, your company, and a couple of thoughts there, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Rocco, and thanks, Hunter, and the rest of the HMG strategy team. I'm very excited to be here today and really excited to be outside of my normal market. So I'm used to the Colorado and the Southwest, so it's fun to be talking with some of the East Coast folks and really looking at this from a global perspective. So I'm Jeff Miller. I'm the Chief Security Officer for Honeywell Quantum Solutions, and I'm certainly grateful for that opportunity. We're part of an organization that is really showing how Honeywell can be nimble to the topic at hand and more entrepreneurial. And we're doing that by investing in and delivering commercial quantum computing solutions that we believe is going to have the ability to unlock tremendous value for not just industry, but the world in general. So super exciting time for us. And I think it's a very unique perspective that I have within a small business unit in a very large Fortune 100 company.
Great. Thanks for that background, Jeff. Snehal, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So Snehal Antani, former CIO at GE Capital. I was the CTO at Splunk. Took a break from industry to serve within national security, work in counterterrorism amongst other issues, and recently started a cybersecurity company called Horizon3.ai. And to your point, my realization as a CIO on the road at Splunk and then within the department elsewhere is that attackers aren't hacking into your environment using 0 days as you would see in the movies. They're logging into your environment. Attackers tend to know more about your enterprise than you do. And when you think about the sudden shift to work from home, you've just tremendously increased the footprint of your organization and created additional blind spots in your visibility, in your processes, in your monitoring, and so on and so forth. And so the challenge is, why is it that attackers know more about your environment than you do? And how do you turn the map around, if you will? How do you start to view your organization through the eyes of the attacker to understand your blind spots, understand where you need to focus and prioritize your efforts so that you can spend your time fixing problems that matter? That's been my personal epiphany, trying to be on the defensive side with some exposure to the offensive side. And now the challenge is, how do we provide that attacker's perspective in a very dynamic and changing world where we flood to work from home, come back, and now we're going to have some sort of hybrid workforce model.
Great points there. Thanks for that, Snehal. Some of the things, as I mentioned before, CIOs received the accolades, and once again, CISOs were thrust into the spotlight. Most and many have risen to the occasion that as much as we're embracing these new technologies, where are the blind spots, where are the gaps, and even further to making sure our companies are secure as we go through this, whether it's leveraging digital innovations, educating the team. One other piece where the CISOs have been thrust into the spotlight is not only educating the workforce, but at the same time, the C-suite, the business, the board for that matter. It's very easy to gravitate back to what Jenny Menna from US Bank told us about earlier, the stories we're hearing about ransomware and attacks. But at the same time, Jeff, we had spoken about some of the things as far as working with the C-level execs while we go into managing our risks and looking at the evolving threats that are coming at our companies. What's different now than what we were doing before? We've all had metrics. There's more and more companies had the CISO report into the board, really advising and updating the C-suite on a regular basis. But when it comes to metrics, especially the last 6 months, what are things that we're doing differently from a business standpoint to manage these risks?
Thanks, Rocco. And security metrics is a topic that a lot of people are very passionate about, and it's one that we've certainly talked a lot about amongst our colleagues as well as internally to our organization and our company. And I think what we're seeing, and a theme that has come across throughout today's event has been, how do we talk in terms of business, or how do we become a better business partner? How do we better understand value to the business? And so I really see a shift in mindset that's going away from reporting security metrics to having a conversation. And I can't take credit for this, but I can take credit for the conversation. Some of my former colleagues and current colleagues were having a dialogue about this very issue, and I think it's very relevant, and it's absolutely worth sharing, which is, when we're talking about security risks, we have to look at it from a different perspective than we are today. So is it really, is what people want to see a list of how many phishing emails we had or how many vulnerabilities we have? At a level, absolutely. There's a time and a place for security metrics, but as you talk to leaders, as you talk to business leaders, as you talk to the board, there are really 5 fundamental questions that you should be able to answer and able to provide. And the first one is, what is our security posture right now? And I think that probably more than anything changed very rapidly with the pandemic. As we had a mass exodus of our workforce going from the office to remote, our security posture changed very rapidly. Do we understand what that posture looks like? But more importantly, how do we know what our security posture is? And to the board and to the leadership, is that good enough? And I think that's a very interesting theme in and of itself that we could probably talk a lot about on, but it's one that we need to collectively understand. When is good enough? And if it is not, then what plans, processes, procedures are we putting in place today that is going to address those vulnerabilities or those gaps in our security risk? And once we have all of that, then it really comes down to that stakeholder buy-in that's been discussed today. Is, do we have an agreement from across the board that is the right plan, and then providing updates over time? Because I don't see this, and it was mentioned before, it can't be about just in time or a point in time. This has to be an ongoing conversation across all of the functions and across all of the leaders. And I think if we can take that, or we can transform our mindset away from just the reporting metrics and looking at it from a conversation, I think it's going to make a big difference.
Great points, Jeff. Thanks for that. And off of the heels of that, just looking at some of the things that companies are doing, we've worked with countless companies and clients, helping them really take the next step and accelerate in the proverbial digital innovation and overall transformation. I think what this has done also is helped CISOs force the hands of their companies, late adopters, something as simple as the cloud. And not to say that the cloud is simple. There's companies that jumped in 5-10 years ago. If you haven't jumped in now, and just the different types of technologies, companies are being forced to accelerate their innovation. If they're not, they're being left behind. And in a lot of instances, here we go. We talked about remote workforce. We're going into the new. The last panel went really deep on that front. As much as we need to embrace the new technologies, Snehal, I know when we were speaking, a lot of the different things, not only your background, but what your current company does in the artificial intelligence space. There's so many companies, even pre-pandemic, were all over artificial intelligence. They're going to get a leg up on the competition. They're going to deliver that proverbial customer experience. Well, guess what? Right now, companies are being forced to do that, whether they want to or not, or like I said earlier, being left behind. As much as we're jumping into the technologies now, what are some of the blind spots that companies should know about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first and foremost, let's think about this in two areas. The first is, how do you as a CIO or CISO run and execute your cybersecurity program and capabilities? There's this quote from the Mike Tyson quote, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face." You might have a brilliant 3-year cybersecurity roadmap that gets you to zero trust and moving target defense and all the other cool things. But that doesn't mean much if you get breached tonight. And so what you have to do as a CISO or a CIO and the board and so on, but especially the CISO level, is you have to operate at 2 speeds. You have to operate with a bias for action. What is your daily security stand-up or your weekly security stand-up to understand what new threats have emerged within your environment last night or last week, and what progress are you making to fix those threats? That could be as simple as a misconfiguration or a new vulnerability that's been released, or whatever else there might be, weaknesses in policies and so on. So what is your bias for action cadence as a CISO? Separately, what is your bias for understanding cadence, which is going to be slower? Are your controls working? Are your tools working? Are your processes working? How are you improving the security DNA of the organization? And so as a CISO, what you've got to do to make sure you don't have blind spots is operate at those two speeds, running your daily or your weekly cybersecurity stand-up, said with the purpose of a bias for action, while making that strategic progress towards your overall vision and goals with that bias for understanding.
Good stuff. Thanks for that, Snehal. Even off of what Snehal was just mentioning, the DNA, cyber hygiene, it just screams more cyber resilience. No one could have planned the pandemic, but at the same time, there's a lot of companies that had preparations underway and others not so much. As much as we've been advocating in this session to pivot, leverage, and embrace new technologies, accelerate our digital innovation. It's great that we're going to educate the C-suite. We're going to get endorsements from the board. But Jeff, how do we inject risk management into our culture, especially the end users? As much as we're going to take on the new technology, not only to overcome these obstacles, but accelerate our innovation, what are some of the things companies should be doing when it comes to the end user and, for that matter, the overall workforce?
Yeah, and so I have to say that I've heard all of the my joint services folks out there. So I'll be representing the Navy today as a retired Navy officer. So I really enjoy a lot of the comments that are being made, that are very militaristic. And I think one of the things we've talked about is what crisis management means in the military versus what that means inside of a business operation. And I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn. Something that I've certainly been digging back into, and I'll definitely shout out to the Army folks for this one, is the acronym VUCA, and I think it's as applicable now as it probably has ever been. And if you don't know what VUCA stands for, it's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I think that really sums up 2020 very, very succinctly. And I think what's more important is, what are the strategies that we can put in place to address those areas? And while that's not specific to necessarily the point that I want to make, I think it's an interesting one, and I think it's something that we should all take a look at. I think when we look at the end users, something that I've experienced, and I'm sure others have as well, is we have really empowered our users in a way that we haven't before. And that has manifested itself in many different ways. We had vehicles lined outside of our business, and we were putting monitors and desktops and laptops in those so they can continue to do their job at home. We discussed things like VPN is creating problems. Do we look at turning off VPN or finding a different solution? So we're really struggling to keep up with our end users. And I think we've really empowered them to have even a louder voice at the table as to what their needs and what their concerns are. And as that changes our risk landscape, we are sprinting to keep up with them. And I think when we look at the word courageous, I think there's a level of courageousness that we're having to see both on the IT and on the cybersecurity side that we haven't been asked to do. And I think it's a very challenging and exciting environment to be in, and keeping pace with those needs of our users, because the workforce is changing, the work environment is changing, and therefore the threat landscape is changing. And so looking at things from both a financial consideration perspective on, are we going to have to move more capital to operating expenses? Are we going to leverage more of our enterprise solutions? So are we going to look at something like Microsoft ATP, or are we going to go with something that's more boutique and start to build that in so that we have greater visibility into things that we started out this conversation with around insider threat? So I think it's a fascinating world that we're in right now. And I think understanding it from those terms of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and understanding how to combat that, even at the end user level from a cybersecurity perspective, has certainly helped out our organization, and I'm pretty sure it could help out others as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Jeff, and especially thanks for your service. Apologies on that oversight. So now take us home. we're out of time here.
No, I appreciate it. I think that in times of uncertainty and in times of ambiguity, there are no books written for us to read from on how to deal with these crises, which makes your network that much more important, right? Hunter and I go back 10 years. Rocco, you and I probably go back at this point 3-4 years just through this event. I learned the most through the interaction with my peers and colleagues through this forum and others. And so the network has never been more important. And my guidance and coaching to everyone around me, whether you're new to industry or you've recently retired from the military, or you've been in industry 30 years as an executive, is cultivating that network and building a group of folks you can reliably talk to and get opinions from, where you're not being sold to, but you're being given guidance that's valuable. The network has never been more important, especially during times of uncertainty. So take advantage of it and build that into your routine of cultivating and nurturing the network.
Fantastic. Thanks again for the input from both of you. Hunter, over to you.
Hey, Rocco, awesome job as well. Jeff, thanks so much. Snehal, great job. Really great to see you all. And that kind of wraps another amazing summit together, folks. I think you'll find no one quite in our industry tackles the problem of being a leading technology executive today, leading courageously, passionately, authentically in these very difficult, uncertain times, and helping you reimagine, reinvent the customer journey, as well as helping you reimagine, reinvent, and think about new business models, facilitating, enabling, and leading the business, and creating new business models and go-to-market. Then the HMG platform, the HMG community, and the HMG Summit model, and hopefully our research. You follow our research as well. My new book's coming out here shortly in about a week, starting research on another new book with Wiley, all around invention and radical new business models in a time of crisis. So more on that to come. Next up is, in closing here, is the HMG Global Technology Executives Who Matter Awards presentation. I want to welcome my colleague, August Palicchio, who leads the program for us here at HMG Strategy, to the program. August, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, Hunter. Hey, thanks everybody for sticking right to the end and being part of our award ceremony. Before we bring our recipients onto the main stage here, I believe we have a little multimedia piece to introduce a couple of them, if we could play that.
Hey, my name is Ben Johnson, CTO and co-founder of Obsidian Security. We're a cybersecurity company focused on cloud detection and response. So we're looking for compromised accounts and data leaks, among other things, in your SaaS applications for file sharing, collaboration, video, and email. And just honored to be part of a team that's working in a exciting, impactful industry and having partners like HMG. So thank you very much.
Thank you, HMG, for selecting the Department of the Air Force CISO team for the 2020 Global Technology Executives Who Matter Award. I graciously accept on behalf of my team. The Department of the Air Force will continue to push the cybersecurity envelope, and my team definitely deserves this award. Once again, HMG, thank you.
Great. So I'd like to begin the program today by welcoming Ben Johnson back onto the screen. Ben is the CTO and co-founder of Obsidian Security, and we just heard from him in the second to last panel here. Hey, Ben, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. So a little bit of background on Ben, everybody. Ben is so deeply passionate and dedicated to his trade. Every time we've spoken, it's really clear to me that he's doing exactly what he loves. As SaaS becomes more common, Ben believes that Obsidian and companies like Obsidian are the only thing standing in between sensitive information and the malicious seekers. Ben also strongly believes that collaboration is a key issue for SaaS cloud development. Being able to monitor, analyze, and react accordingly is the difference between being hacked and secured. He says, one of the best insights I've heard from you, Ben, is when it comes to security, you either are or you are not. So thank you for being so passionate and dedicated, and congratulations on this award.
Thank you so much to you and the team and Hunter and HMG. So thank you so much.
Great job, Ben.
Next, we'd like to recognize Wanda Jones-Heath. She also spoke with us today. She's the CISO for the United States Air Force. Hey, Wanda, welcome to the program again.
Thank you.
So, Wanda has been known to say that she knew since the 7th grade she wanted a career in some capacity of computer science. Wanda has a unique perspective in developing infrastructure, policy, and risk management for the Air Force. She's pushed efficiency in revolutionizing Air Force's risk management and mobility frameworks. As you said before, Wanda, you operate in an environment where mission failure is not an option. Accelerate, change, or lose. So Wanda, I'm really blown away by the work you do. Congratulations.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate it. Hunter and team, thank you.
It's great, Wanda. It's really, this was an easy one. You've been a great fan and supporter for years in the DC market, and it's really a pleasure to be with you. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Finally, we'd like to welcome Jim Turgel back on the stage here. Hey, Jim, thanks for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me.
Excellent job on the panel today. We really appreciate a lot of the insights, took on a lot of great notes. So Jim advises senior executives on the crisis management challenges they face, in particular in cyber risks. He helps clients develop and execute security programs to prevent and reduce the business impact of cyber threats. He has, due to his vast experience in cyber risk and crisis management, he frequently speaks publicly on developing cyber events in programs like this. He joined Deloitte after retiring in 2017 from a 22-year career with the FBI. And in his last position in the FBI, he served as the C-suite level executive responsible for the enterprise's worldwide information and technology needs. It's been a really long and proud career with the FBI and with Deloitte. Jim, congratulations on receiving this award.
Thank you so much, August, Hunter. We've had a great partnership, even during my years with the FBI, and certainly we continued that after I left the FBI and joined Deloitte. Always a great fan. It's a great honor. I truly appreciate it.
Excellent, Jim. Great to have you and great to see you today. And this all, folks, is going to roll up into a program that early in 2021. August, do you want to talk a little bit about the gala, kind of a global program, a global recognition program? August?
Sure. So over the last 10 years, we've been awarding for the top leadership and digital disruption and transformation. But this year, 2020, it really separated the winners from the losers and the top talent. So in celebration of that, we're bringing together the 10-year anniversary gala of our most astounding award winners as we presented them over the past 10 years. We're going to be doing a ceremony, a formal get-together in January of 2021 and celebrate all the really great and distinct leadership that we've recognized.
It's outstanding.
Yep. So thanks. Congratulations, Ben, Wanda, and James. You know, another great summit, right? Really solid. I thought the thought leadership, Jim, the content was excellent, wasn't it?
Just amazing, right? One of the best panels that we've seen and had, and I've been on a number of these.
Thank you. And it's all about pushing the tech leader into the C-suite, the board, and elevating your brand and your career ascent on a global level. That's what we do better than anyone out in the industry, and a lot of success stories and how people have accelerated their career ascent by attracting, retaining, and growing their organization, as well as finding their next big opportunity. A big shout out to John Iannarelli. Great job, John. Always good to see you, my friend. And our partners. We couldn't have done today without Awake, Zoom, and Obsidian. So really appreciate it, folks. Everyone stay safe, stay in touch, and stay connected to our next summit. Our next CISO summit is October 29th, Digital Summit in New York City. Bye now.